Hello, good morning. Welcome to our Wednesday agency business blueprint discussion where we talk about different tips that can help you in your agency or with starting your agency. We also discuss different state regulations, rules, and how to get licensed. And if we have not met yet, my name is Bethany. I am the creator of the Home Care Agency Startup Academy and this Facebook group where we have all of this great discussions. So today, I want to talk to you about some top things that you should consider when writing your policies and procedures for your home care agency. Now, let's start with who may not need to do this. Okay, so there are actually 11 states that are not regulated, meaning that you don't need to get licensed or certified for your home care agency. And so they more than likely are not going to be looking for policies and procedures. Even still, it's a really good idea to have, if you're one of those 11 states, and I can put that information below later, it's good to have some standard operating procedures. This is just going to provide efficiency and flow when it comes to running your home care agency. And also, what I like about policies and procedures is it sets this expectation. It tells your staff, it tells your administrative staff, it tells your caregiving staff what's expected of them. Right? And this is how it gets carried out, and kind of like, hey, if you violate this policy or you don't do it correctly, these are the consequences. Actions and consequences, right? Like, so it puts all of that information out there so that your employees know what's expected of them and how you want them operating within your agency. And then if they don't, it was all there, right? It was all there in the policy and procedure. So it kind of takes away from you having to potentially be the bad guy as well, because it's all there in your standard operating procedures, or if they are state-specific policies and procedures, you can even say, and I do this, I'm notorious for this. I'll say, well, it's not me, it's the state. It's the state of Maine. State of Maine made that rule, not me. So it just really, really helps, because let's face it, those of us that are getting into this business, we're super caring people. We love to help people, and that part of managing your staff can sometimes be a little uncomfortable. But again, if you have this already out there for them and they have access to the company policies and procedures, they know what's expected of them, then you can always throw it back on the policies and procedures, which is really nice. Now, for the other, let's say 39 states that are regulated, then your state is going to ask that you have state-specific policies and procedures. They may ask you to submit this with your original application for licensure, or they may ask to see this maybe a year from when you fill out your application, when they come out to do an inspection, when they come out to survey your office, look at your personnel files. They may then, at that point, ask to see your policies and procedures. I'm going to be straight up honest with you that in Maine, where I am, I'm regulated, but they've never once asked to see my policies and procedures. They in the beginning, of course, they wanted to know that I had a plan of care, that I had certain documents and forms in place, but never once policies and procedures. I do feel, just from what I'm learning, reading what's happening in the government, is that we're going to see more streamlined towards policies, procedures, them being more of a requirement across the board. And I bring up the government because most of our programs are government funded, right? And so like your Medicaid, they already have made a streamline. They did that 3 years ago, where if you're a Medicaid provider, that you have to be using electronic visit verification, and you have to, that's how your staff will clock in, clock out, record their care tasks, and that's what they made like across the board for Medicaid providers. So I imagine that coming down the road, we're going to see that everybody needs to have policies and procedures, not right off, but you know, down the road. That's my own feeling from just how I'm seeing everything starting to, within our programs, have this same consistent thing across the board in all states. But for today, let's talk about policies and procedures and what you need to include. And let's just say it. Let's just call it, right? So these are a little overwhelming. And depending on, again, what state you're in and what they want. So what you need to figure out, first of all, is if you're one of the 11 that aren't regulated, then you can do some standard operating procedures, okay? And you can include just kind of your basic things. Here, let me look up my list here. You can include some of your basic things like your job descriptions and what your PCA or your PSS, your caregiver, their duties, their responsibilities, who supervises them, who does their evaluations, how often are their evaluations done. You can include things like your client satisfaction, your client complaints, your client bill of rights, your client privacy act. You can include a whole section on HIPAA, right? HIPAA. Okay. Sorry. That's a big thing in our field is HIPAA. All right. So, and it's just fun to say. Okay. So you can include things like that, and in your general, in your standard operating procedures. I do have a whole outline of this when I do write policies and procedures for people, and I do have the standard operating policies and procedures that I do, and I can share some more information on that and write that out for you. But for your state specific, where do you go? How do you start? So you're going to go to your state's website in your licensing and certification. It might be your DHHS. It might be your, say, virginia.gov. All right, so you got to figure that out. And then you're going to be looking for your home care organization or your private duty nursing, whatever. It's so different in every state. So you got to figure out what your program is called, right? Is it personal care agency? Is it private duty nursing? Is it home care organization? So you got to figure that terminology out, where you fall, okay? And then you look, let's call it home care organization. You go to their rules and regs. You're going to pull up rules and regs. You're going to pull up definitions. I love definitions, right? Because my idea of, let's say, what an administrator is and your idea of what an administrator is and their duties might be two different things compared to what your state says it is. So we need to be writing to whatever your state defines it as, okay? So you're going to pull that up. And then if possible, an administrative code. So administrative code is also going to have a list of items that should be included in your policies and procedures. All right. And I think it is helpful when we're looking at these to put them into sections, right? So we might start off with like a section 1 is all your administration policies. Section 2 might be your client policies. Section 3, your personnel policies. Section 4 might be health and safety. Section 5 might be HIPAA, okay? So putting them all into sections, right, and kind of breaking them up like that, I think allows them to be clearly read. They're clean, easy, all right? So we figured out the website we need to go to, and we're gonna put them into sections. Now, writing them. Let me just give you a couple of tips on writing what it should say, what it should look like. Let me get my paper here. Okay, so this is from the state of New York's website. They are very helpful when it comes to policy and procedure. I'm just going to tell you if you're in New York. So they want you to put it in an easy to read format. The language should be to the point, easily understood. They want the goal is to understand the information provided so it'll be retained and used. So it's heavy words, policies and procedures. There's a lot that need to be included, but they want it to be easy and to the point, at least in the state of New York. And I think that's really across the board. You want them to be understood so they can be carried out. Okay. The structure of a policy and procedure should not be lengthy and should not require complex information. Short statements clearly identifying the need or objective should be used. Okay, so what we want to definitely have on every single policy, okay, here comes the list. Agency name, of course, your policy number. So you need to number these. You need to number them because, well, it looks really professional and numbered. But beyond that, it's helpful when you're looking through this big binder of policies and procedures. If somebody says, yeah, that's policy 3.12, you can go, okay, I got to go to the third section here, and then I got to go find number 12, right? So for ease of locating, we need a policy number. There needs to be a title on each and every one of the policies and procedures. So example, let's say it's all about your under administrative and your criminal background checks. You want it to say criminal history record check, okay? And policy number, you have your agency number above that. Let me see if I can show you a policy template, a picture here. So you can see there that it's very clean, very precise, this template, and how you would fill that out. You can get fancy and add your logo in. You can, use Word and just create a header and put your logo in, put your information, and the logo will carry throughout every single page. When I say every single page, I am currently writing for Virginia. I'm almost done, and it's over 300 pages. So it's nice when you can just edit a header and it all goes to every single page. We love that. For ease, got to keep it simple, save our energy for other things, right? Okay. So then you want to have your policy's statement and purpose. That needs to be clearly defined. Like, what is the purpose of this policy? Of course, they want a date. They want the page numbers. Now, let's say that your policy is 5 pages long. You're going to put on the first page 1 of 5, then 2 of 5, 3 of 5, right? And so on. The other thing that you want to have is you're going to have your policy, and then you're going to have like what it is, and then you're going to have your definitions. So again, looking at your state definitions when you're writing these and putting in what exactly it is when we're talking the terminology here, what it exactly means. So then you get into your procedure. So policy and procedure, it all goes on one thing. So if we're talking about how we conduct a criminal background check, right, and how we make sure that gets done, we put all that information at the top here, right? That's what it is, how many pages it is, so on and so forth. We put the policy that says we conduct a criminal, this is very vague, by the way. We conduct such and such home care LLC conducts annual background checks for all of their employees. And then you could do like a definition, like what's the definition of a criminal background check? What does that entail? Who's an employee or who's a contractor? And you can put in your definitions. And then as far as your procedure goes, so that describes the process and the actions that are taken to comply with that policy. So what do, right? So with your background checks, I would imagine you are, as far as procedure goes, you are working within one of your state websites that allow you to do background checks. And so you're going to www. blah, 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 and doing the background check. Maybe that's one part of the procedure. Maybe another part of the procedure is that you're making phone calls to previous employers, or you're making phone calls to, it'd be previous employers. So anything that you're doing to make sure that you're complying with that policy and making that background check happen, okay? Some states are going to get really in-depth. We'll just keep using the criminal background as an example. So some states are going to get really in-depth. They're going to look at any past abuse, like elder abuse. I've even seen them wanting to see child abuse records, which at first I was confused. So I'm like, oh, we're working with usually elderly and disabled populations, but abuse is abuse, right? Doesn't it? It's like, so if maybe they're, somebody, it's really hard to talk about, but maybe somebody doesn't have any sanctions against them for abusing an elderly or disabled person, but then they have this over here. Yeah, we're not hiring them. Sorry, you're out. Okay, so that's all good information to have. You also can run driving background checks because they're driving between client to client. They may be transporting your clients to doctor's appointments. You want to know if they have a good driving record, right? So there's several pieces that can fall, several checks that can fall under that criminal background check policy. And so different things that you would put in the procedure that you're checking and that you would identify, right? So we make it very clean. Just to summarize, we make it very clean at the top. We put in our policy, what we're doing, our definitions, our procedures. And then at the end, if you want to, you can put in corresponding forms that correspond with that policy, whatever it may be. So I hope that this helps. I hope this gives you some ideas and some tips about how to do this. If you have any questions about policies and procedures, please feel free to reach out to me. I do write them for individual states. Currently working with Virginia. I'm doing all the standard operating procedures, and Texas, Indiana, that's what I'm working with right now. But my goal is to keep expanding this and growing this library to just be available to anybody who is needing it. So if you're getting started, or you're like, oh my gosh, I got started, but I need these in place, then you can always reach out to me. If you are not wanting to write your own, because they're pretty overwhelming, not gonna lie. It can be done. It can totally be done. But I just want to give you the option and the information there. And for students of the Academy, they do receive a discount on my policies and procedures service. Even one of the Academy programs, it's just included in there. So make sure that you're checking that out and reach out to me with any questions. Thank you for being here. Take care.